Right, in this video, we're going to take a look at some of the health problems that can be associated with the use of computers. Now, I'm sure you know probably RSI and back pain and things like that, but I actually want to start with the number one reason for absence from the workplace, full stop, in the UK. It overtook back problems as the biggest reason around about 4 or 5 years ago. It's 2011, by the way, now. And the number one reason is actually this word: stress. Stress has become the major reason for people having absence from work. And what I'd like to do is talk about how can ICT systems introduce stress into the workplace. Because at the end of the day, the reality is that why ICT should make you, as a person, more productive. It shouldn't make you more stressful. So why does it make you more stressful? Well, let's have a look at some of the reasons for stress. Now, in a previous video, we looked at human-computer interfaces. If you haven't watched it yet, maybe you want to watch that one first before doing this one. Because one of the reasons for stress is frustrating software. And often frustrating software is combined with poor HCI design. Sometimes you just get poor layouts and it's difficult to find things. Certainly I know one of the things I hate about OpenOffice Writer, which we use at my school, is that the crop tool, you have to go in and you have to, it's a pain in the bum. I'll tell you one piece of software the kids at my school really struggle with is Flash. Now, I don't think necessarily that that's a poor HCI. I hate it when that happens. The bell keeps going. I forgot it's break time now. Anyway, let's move on. Flash isn't particularly poor human-computer interface design. It's just so frustrating that if you kind of do something wrong, you've got to undo everything. And by the end of the lesson, some of the kids are making fantastic progress, and some of the kids just want to throw the computers out the windows and punch the screens. They hate it. Frustrating software. It's not bad software. It's just that they find it frustrating. But one thing's for sure, I do get kids going, I couldn't do it, I couldn't get my homework. And there's no doubt that some of these kids are suffering from stress. The cruel man that I am for making them do Flash. Issue number 2. As well as frustrating software that you can't really use it very well, one of the things that I'm sure you've all experienced, indeed it's the second time for doing this video, because actually this happened to me a moment ago. PowerPoint simply crashed on me, and I was a good 15 minutes into this, I was right near the end. How annoying was that? But software does crash. I'm not a particularly wound up person, so I wasn't stressed. I thought, no problem, I'll do it again. But one thing is for sure, I lost my work that I'd done. That was incredibly annoying. And I'm sure that you guys have experienced that. I'm sure some of you honestly have actually said, the software crashed, I lost my work, and it didn't really, you just didn't be bothered to do it. But I'm sure some of you have experienced the loss of work in the past, and of course that's stressful. Of course, what I would suggest is that whenever you're working, I couldn't do it with this, but you might want to make sure, for example, if you're doing some homework in Word, make sure your autosave turned on. If you don't know how to do that, just go to F1 go open up Word, F1, autosave, and it'll show you how to do the settings, because that's trying to reduce stress, because they've given you a nice help thing, which I'll come back to in a little moment's time. Third reason why we see stress is, I think it's just the pace of change. What I mean by that, and this perhaps really applies to the older generation, so we'll put older people. You guys are very fortunate. You've grown up in an environment where new technologies come along and you learn to adapt really quickly. I've got this new iPhone 4 and yes, no problem, I can use it within seconds. What I find really annoying is that my dad wants to use email. He's in his 70s now, and he's okay, but he keeps ringing me up and saying, how do I attach a picture? I'm like going, we've done this so many times, Dad. And I try not to get wound up, but occasionally I do get a little bit, why can't you do it, you crazy old man? But the whole point is that actually, that doesn't necessarily just cause stress for the person who's trying to do it. It can actually cause stress for the trainer. And actually, within a department, if you've got staff going, I can't remember how to do this, it's like, oh God, you're not being productive, and that can cause me stress as a manager. So how can we make some attempt to reduce stress? How do we reduce stress? Well, the first way of doing it, of course, is that you need to provide adequate training. If you're going to implement new IT systems at your workplace, train your staff on how to use it. But you cannot expect your staff to always remember how to do it, just like my dad. So the least you can do is make sure that you have some sort of help desk facility, so if someone can't remember how to do something, or they want to do something they haven't been trained to do, they can ring up and they can ask someone to walk them through how to do it. Other things that you could do, and this is something perhaps I want to talk about now in relation to my school. We're having major problems at my school at the moment with Macromedia. It's now the Adobe suite. Fireworks Flash, not from the kids hate Flash because they find it really difficult, but it just keeps crashing and it doesn't load on certain machines. And it's not that there's any fault with the software, it's just the way we've implemented it across our network. We haven't tested thoroughly enough to see what the problem is, and now it's becoming problematic, and that's causing stress for the kids in my class, because some of them have to get up and move around to other computers because some of the computers work and some don't. And we're in school at the moment, it's the holidays, and my technicians are trying to solve that problem now whilst I'm making this video. So fingers crossed they'll solve it, we'll test it, and next time it'll work fine, and that will see stress levels for my staff and for my students come down. Fingers crossed anyway. Then we've got to do the wireless stuff, because that's a complete nightmare. But I won't bore you with that, because you don't want to know about that one. One of the other issues that we do get is kids come and say, oh, my pen drive has been infected with a virus. And we go, what antivirus you got at home? And they go, I haven't got any. And it's like, oh, well done. You know, you got a virus and you haven't got any antivirus. You know, viruses are designed to damage and corrupt IT systems and files. So, you know, put yourself some decent antivirus, and please make sure that it's certainly up to date. And indeed, actually, you might even want to mention that you could pop yourself a firewall onto your system, because that will reduce stress, because you're less likely to get corrupted files or hacked files in terms of firewalls. So let's move on. I want to deal with, there are sort of 3 more issues that I want to deal with. I think what we'll have a look at now is eye strain. One of the most common answers that I see is that kids will go into exam and say, you know, what methods of reducing eye strain? Can't really see any other question. I'm not going to ask you explain in medical terms how eye strain is caused, but they're probably going to say, how can you reduce the effects of eye strain? And people do this one. They say, okay, no problem. Make sure that everyone has got natural lighting. Not that word. In fact, that actually can be a problem, which I'll come to in my second point. Replace the word natural with the word good or the word adequate, and then you have a correct answer. Some banks in London, they have offices like that, maybe 3 or 4 floors underground, down in the vaults. You've got computers down there. How do you provide natural lighting down there? You have a mirror system from the out. It's not going to happen, is it? So it's not natural lighting. You need to make sure they've got good or adequate lighting. Number 2, little diagram here. Maybe I should have got a picture. Imagine you've got a computer here, and that's the screen in front of you. It's your keyboard, your mouse. I won't draw that. And behind the computer there is a window, and I'm just going to draw like a little roller blind there, which I'll come on to in a moment. If you're sat at this computer, I've got a light source 1 from the computer screen, but from the window behind I've got a light source 2. That actually can cause eye strain. So when you put natural lighting down as an answer, 1, it's not a cure because it's good lighting, and 2, actually providing natural lighting can cause even more problems, because what you don't want is no multiple light sources. No multiple light sources, because if you actually have 2 different light sources impacting on your eye, I was going to use a word like cornea, but I don't know if that's the right word, not your eye, that actually can cause eye strain. 2 light sources can cause eye strain. So therefore, what you want to make sure is that if you are going to have a computer by a window, or so you've got to make sure that the blind can be rolled down so light source 2 can disappear. You don't want 2 light sources on the eye. Issue number 3 that we associate with eye strain: prolonged use. Prolonged use. Sat at a computer for ages. Some people's jobs, and specifically this job, a data entry clerk, what they do is they sit at a computer all day long, and they'll just, some of them end up squinting at the computer. It is the law that your employer must ensure that you take regular breaks from your computer. The law just says regular breaks. There isn't actually a defined number. I mean, I think most people accept that it's probably about 15 minutes per hour of actual work on the computer. But you must be in a job where you do nothing but look at a computer screen typing things in. So it only really applies to things like data entry clerks. If you're a secretarial staff, you might be doing some word processing, do some photocopying, do some other forms of filing, administration, whatever you're going to do. You're not prolonged use of the computer, so you get regular breaks when you go and do something else. If you're in a school and your lesson is more than an hour long, there's an interesting one. Should you actually be entitled to say, I want a break, I don't want to do any more work, I've been looking at the screen? I'm not really convinced that that's going to be the case. But if your job is 8 hours a day typing stuff in, your employer has to give you regular breaks. And also interesting, you must take them. You can't just go, no, I will work here. The employer must insist, and you must take it. It is actually the law. The other thing that's the law is eye tests. If you are, once again, a prolonged user, it is the law, interestingly enough, your employer, I don't know why I put an arrow like that. I wish I'd put it there. They must pay for your eye tests. And if, as a result, it is proven that your eyesight has deteriorated, you're going to need, possibly, glasses. And your employer must also pay for the glasses. I'm not sure you'll get all the fancy, I don't know, Armani ones, but you might get those milk bottle ones from the NHS that they used to have when I was a kid. So that's pretty much when it comes to eye strain. Decent lighting, no multiple light sources, take regular breaks, and if you're working on a computer constantly, you're entitled with your employer to pay for eye tests and for glasses. Let's move on to the one that I think most of you guys probably have heard of, RSI. It stands for repetitive strain injury. Interesting enough, just off on the side, you've probably heard this expression before: tennis elbow. Tennis players get it because they're constantly whacking them tennis balls and bending their tennis, and it's just the overuse, basically it's the overuse of a joint or a tendon. And in IT, the biggest concern, or not the biggest, the major concern that we would think of is a particular form of RSI, which is known as carpal tunnel syndrome. Right. What do I mean, what's the carpal tunnel? Well, what I'm going to ask you to do is, I'm going to try and do this now, but by hand drawing. This is going to be kind of weird. I'm no artist, and there's my thumb, and there's one finger, two finger. That's terrible, isn't it? And there we go. What I want you to do is hold up your right hand and take your left hand and place your left hand, it's supposed to be so as your fingers, like that. There we go. That's not too bad. You get the idea. If you take your left hand and place it on your right hand, and then what I want you to do is just wiggle your fingers. Wiggle all of your fingers like that. No, seriously, I want you to do this now. I'll take a moment. Hold on. You doing it? Good. You'll notice in here that there's a lot of motion if you press down. That's all your tendons going. And it's kind of weird because you're the first kids, like in history, as human beings in the development of mankind, you're the first group that have done this since a young age. And what the concern is that quite a large proportion of you might end up with carpal tunnel syndrome. And what that does is it makes the tendons in your wrist, it makes them contract. And there's a school of thought that says that all of you are going to end up, rather than hands, you're going to end up with sort of like claws, because your fingers will all be bent in. And you're all going to have ultimately, you can rectify that, by the way, but it's going to require some surgery. So when it comes to repetitive strain injury, what can you do? Well, solutions. One, get a job that doesn't involve using a computer. A lot of you, that's not going to be too easy, is it? But 2, use a gel pad wrist rest. That will give some support to the wrist when you're typing. And talking of typing, a lot of you will type with just like 2 fingers on each hand. Normally it's the, oh, is that the index? And that's the, those 2, isn't it? Those 4. You want to solve that? Learn to touch type. If you touch type, at least you're You're using 5 fingers on your hand rather than 2, which means that you won't be putting as much pressure on 2 specific tendons. Oh, so you get those hands up and feel it again. Just try wiggling you can see it doesn't do. Anyway, I'll leave you to do that one. Learning to touch type will help you. And the other thing is when you're using a computer, and I'll come to this on the next page as well, what you want to do is you want to keep your forearms and your wrist straight. You can also get another solution, I'll put this one down here, is what we call a split keyboard. I really should have got a picture, but I kind of wanted to get this one done quickly, but I didn't get a picture of a split keyboard. You can Google ergonomic keyboard. Oh, that's the word we're looking for. Oh, I don't know why K21 came up there. Ergonomics. This is what this is all about. So, talking of ergonomics, you've got your strain in your wrist, but the biggest issue, not the biggest, the second biggest issue, because stress took over, was back issues. Aha! Let's move on now to back pain. Back pain. An old picture that I had a friend draw up many, many years ago. Oh, look, you can see wrists straight and level. Back pain. Well, actually, we'll go for back and we'll go for neck as well. Back. Okay, back pain, RSI, same sort of thing, really. Actually, back pain, perhaps not RSI. Well, first, if you constantly in a computer, you're putting stress on your back, so yeah. Anyway, you can see here that this chair has been designed to support this curve of the back, and what we're basically saying is that you need to get yourself a chair that has what we call a lumbar support. So what that helps to do is it keeps your back nice and straight, but supports your back all the way along the length of it. Now, what you want, as you can see from here, one of the things you need to do is, looking along here, is that your eyes must be level with the top of the screen. So let's put eyes level. Well, the only way you can do that, if you look down here, okay, not the pen, maybe I should go with the red pen. You can only keep your eyes level with the top of the screen if, when you're going with a chair, you can adjust the chair height. So what you need is a chair that is adjustable in height, so you can bring your eyes level with the top of the screen. Otherwise, what that tends to mean is that you can see here, I've gone focused on the neck here. If you're not level with the top of the screen, if you're looking up a little bit or looking down, what this can actually do, if eyes are not level, what you can end up with is not actually really back pain, but what you can end up with is quite a lot of neck pain. And this is something I can talk of actually from personal experience, to be honest with you. I suffered with an awful lot of neck pain years ago. And I had to go to chiropractor. And they're really good. They crack your bones. They went crack, crack, crack. And I don't get the pain anymore. But I do use a computer properly now. I don't sort of crouch over it. One of the things that you want to think about is that there are specific types of computers that this can be really exacerbated by. And that's the overuse of laptops. Because at the end of the day, a laptop, chances are you're going to be looking down at it. If you're looking at a laptop, it'll probably be down there somewhere. And if you do that, that's going to cause your neck muscles, contract on the front and expand on the back. Because your head, if it's tilted forward, let's try and do that a little bit. That means that the front there, they're going to contract. And at the back there, they're going to expand. And what you want to be doing is making sure that your head's just not doing any your neck's doing not any contracting or expanding. One other thing, health and safety. And again, this diagram, actually 2 other things. This diagram, if you've adjusted your chair to bring up and your feet don't touch the floor, you want to make sure that you can get a footrest. We haven't drawn that in that diagram. Let's see if we can draw a footrest there. And the final thing, we didn't do it on this one. This chair, just out of interest, I've got little circles there. I don't know if you can quite see that. All chairs, from a safety point of view, not from an RSI point of view, but from a safety point of view, chairs when you're sitting on a computer should have a 5-point base. And the reason for a 5-point base is that will give you stability. You're less likely to fall over. So you try it at home. You try, you're on a 4-point chair, normal chair. You can rock backwards. Yeah, you fall backwards. You do this as a laugh in school all the time, don't you? Try doing it on one with a 5-point base. It's actually a lot harder. And often on the chairs, they'll often put wheels. And the reason for wheels is that if somebody's working with multiple computers in an office, they actually don't have to get up and down to move from point A to point B, because actually simply the process of regularly getting up and down from your chair will actually put pressure on your back, your lower back and your knees in particular. So it's another way of avoiding RSIs if you can wheel yourself around the room. It's just fun, really, isn't it? But we can justify it with health and safety. You go to your teachers in your school. If you're sat there with normal chairs now, just go, this video says we must have wheels on our chairs and you cannot take them off, and then we can have races up and down the class. Anyway, I hope that's given you a good picture as to the various health issues. There is one more. They talk about radiation from screens, but to be honest with you, ELF radiation, that always makes me laugh. ELF radiation, I'm sure it's a joke, I won't do it. I've never really been convinced by it. On the old screens, you had these cathode ray tubes, the old big ones that look like the old televisions with the big tubes at the back. Yeah, but on your current sort of screens, I don't buy it, to be honest with you. Not convinced by that one. If I were you, I'd go with back pain, RSI, eye strain, but the number one reason, and people forget it, is simply stress. Anyway, hope that all made sense.